Good evening, everyone. I think we can start. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to tonight's talk. Thank you for your time. When I ask parents what they want for their children, the answers are always quite the same. They usually say, I just want my child to be happy, and what is best for my child. And that thing that is best for them is that parents really just want their children to be healthy and happy. And I'm sure that as parents, we are definitely very much concerned about the impact that technology might have on their development. And this leaves us that we need to decide whether we're going to take or look at this in a positive or maybe in a negative way. It all depends if we are going to work with it or against it. Which leaves us with this question. What are the implications for our children's healthy development in the digital age? Now, a large part of this generation's social and emotional development take place while they are on the internet or on their cell phones. And if we can add to the mix the internet pornography, the cyberbullying, as well as the predominance of gaming, we can see the reasons why we have the statistics that we have. Now, the statistics that I'm showing you here, I got from an organization, Be in Touch. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them later on. But they've done some research in South Africa in 2020, and they've done it in private schools. And one of the percentages there that I'm really concerned about is, if you take a look at that, is 84% of children or young adults sleep with devices in their bedrooms. Now, during this presentation, when I talk about children, I refer to children between the ages, young people between the ages of 8 and 18. And those children spend on average about 10 hours per day engaged with technology of one form or another. Like we said, for parents, it's very important for us that our children develop in a healthy way. Now, these are the guidelines from the World Health Organization. And if you take a look at those guidelines, you will see, especially if I can quickly go to between the ages of 14 and 18, while I said the average child spends about 10 hours per day, children between the ages of 14 and 18 are actually just allowed 3 hours per day. But let's take a look from the top. Babies and toddlers between the ages of 0 and 2 years, no screens for babies and toddlers, except video calls. And the reason for that is that it's got an impact on their healthy development. It also has an impact on their focus, on their fine motor control, as well as on their language. If you take a look at the ages between 2 and 3, all screen interactions should be chosen with the parent. And you can see that it also has an impact on their development. And things like their eyesight, their body control, delayed language, as well as their cognitive ability. 5 to 10 years, the impact of technology can cause social anxiety. And this is also the age where they start to become more obsessive about games and a concern about gaming. So if we can give a tip to parents, it's just to think about it and do not allow any gaming during the week. And also another tip to parents is, please, children between the ages of 5 and 10, no personal devices. So if you can go back to the previous slide, you will see that according to this research, they found that 84% of children by the age of 12 already have some kind of phone or a tablet. Children between 10 and 14 years old, this is where that whole thing about lack kicks in. And what happens here, it's a lack of self-control. They also develop, has an impact on their lack of to read social cues. They also start to have a lack of enthusiasm, and they are starting to withdraw. Devices should be loaned, not owned. And screen time must be seen as a privilege, not as a right. And also no devices in your room. If I can go back to the previous slide again, and you will see the research shows that 84% of children already sleep with devices in the room. I just want to remind you that this was research that they've done in private schools in South Africa. It's also important for parents to start during this age, to start to discuss the use of devices, especially regarding entertainment versus productivity. And then our teenagers or young adults between 14 and 18, the impact that it has on them are things like social withdrawal. They develop a low self-esteem. They also get to become distorted of the idea of reality. And again, there's the lack of social intelligence. There's also the lack that they don't complete their goals, and they prefer online relationships. And they also develop poor posture as well as bad sleeping habits. As a parent, it is important to talk with your teenager about entertainment versus productivity. And also to talk with a teenager about the digital fantasy versus reality. Now, the reason for me showing you this is just to give you the background. And this is what we are going to work with for the rest of tonight's presentation. And I also know that many of you attend this presentation because this is what you want to know. However, that being out of the way, we first need to pause here and start to take a look what lies beneath everything. So keep in mind that parenting is not a set of skills and behaviors. And above all, it is a relationship. So many of you might have expectations for tonight that I'm going to give you a formula. But before we can go there, it is important that you need to understand what is going on here. So what you can expect for tonight's presentation is merely, first of all, an explanation, and then I'm going to give you some broad guidelines. The how will be determined by your ability as a parent to foster a relationship with your child. So, how to control your child's access to computer games and other devices. Also, when to introduce such technology to our children. And I'm sure that many of you want answers to those questions. Now, our relationship with our children starts since birth. And it's important to know that it is never a good plan as a parent to set any rules when there is no relationship or an attachment between the parent and the child. The when and the how you are going to set rules will be determined by our children's relationship with us, as well as their level of emotional maturity. Attachment is central in human life. And if we do not understand attachment, we cannot explain what is actually happening in the digital world. And because attachment is so important, that's why we can explain the wild popularity of social media, the dynamics of cyberbullying, as well as the seductive appeal of video games and online pornography. And that brings us to another question. What is driving the digital world? Now, many of us think that it is all about information and entertainment. However, in our brain's hierarchy of importance, information actually ranks very low. Where connection, well, I can tell you that's another story. Our primary need and our dominant need as human beings is togetherness. And when I talk about we, that includes our children. We want assurance to belong to those who matter to us. So what do I mean by that? And that is why we and our children are concerned that we are seen as similar to those that we value. And we also want to feel important to them, and we want to be liked by them. We want to feel that we are wanted and understood. And we also want to experience that we matter. And we are driven to know whether or not we are invited into another person's presence. And that's the reason why we present ourselves in the hope that this invitation will be forthcoming. Now, many of us think that business, learning, and entertainment must be our highest priority. It's not. How this interaction unfolds is determined by our attachment with our children. So you can see, and you will agree with me, that attachment actually shapes our interaction. How we do that in person, by mail, email, by phone, by internet, or Zoom. So what I'm actually trying to tell you is that, yes, we know technology may be new, but the dynamics are as old as humankind. Technology, originally designed for information, has been pressed into the surface of seeking connection. It has also come to act as a compensation for the frustrated attachment needs of children, which can never fulfill this need. Unfortunately, it can only make it worse for those who are vulnerable, which are our children. Digital media is addictive because, remember, we spoke about the dynamics. So children use digital media not so much to learn than to form and maintain relationships. They also use digital media not to solve problems, but rather to escape from them. And this leaves us with a basic human dilemma. How to be close when apart. How to feel connected to people from whom one is physically separated. How to experience a sensation of closeness when one is actually not feeling wanted. How to get a sense of significance. How to feel important when we do not seem to matter to those who matter to us. Well, there is a way to solve this problem. And we all know it very well. We can recruit dozens and hundreds of friends on Facebook who will like us without any genuine responsibility. And these scenarios give us that fleeting sensation we so desire. They take us where we want to go with no hint of the risk involved. We call it attachment fixes. And those attachment fixes can become more appealing than real life. And as parents, We need to set the example. Unfortunately, we often see parents ignore their kids while they themselves engage in texting and other digital communication. Now, I know immediately you will think by yourself, but is there no safe or useful way to introduce our youth to the benefits of the digital age? Well, there is. It is all a matter of timing, and only when our children are ready for it. It is important to realize that we want technology to enhance their growth instead of interfering with it. And that can only happen when they have developed sufficiently. So our job in the meanwhile is not to put temptation in their way until they are ready for what the digital world offers our children. It is not what they need. In fact, it interferes with what they need. It is difficult to get enough of something that almost works. Now, what do I mean by that? Here you will see on this slide, if you take a look at connection, and when I refer to connection here, I'm talking about social connection with technology and devices, and attachment is that core instinct attachment that we need to have with our children. So you will see they are quite the same. There's only one difference. What do you think is it? Social connectivity does not bind people or children. It preoccupies. There's nothing inherently bad about technology. The concern is actually about their use, especially in the hands of children. Now, COVID-19 forced us to rapidly adjust to major technology advances. And now more than ever, we need to become more conscious about when we are going to introduce technology to our children and when to discourage. We also need to become conscious to work with technology instead of against it. And we also need to learn how to use technology to our benefit. Technology is good. Actually, it's fantastic. But we need to be conscious of the potential side effects for our children. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me give you a practical example. Sex is good, but not for children. We need to control sexual activity until there is some developmental readiness. Alcohol can be part of ritual and feasting, but it's not for children. And we all know alcohol is everywhere. But as parents, we attempt to control access to it until the child is mature enough to handle it. Cookies are good like most desserts. And our children's worlds are full of sweets and cookies and desserts. And for most part, we do a fairly good job of controlling access. So we actually want our children to be fulfilled with what they truly need before they can have access to that which would spoil their appetite. So the worst thing that we can do is to send our children away from us hungry. And once our children are full of attachment, technology is a relatively harmless pleasure. Being liked, belonging to, being on the same side, being dear to, mattering to, being attached at the heart, to feeling known by. These are all natural attachment modalities. And it takes time. as well as the right conditions to develop. And we must be patient for this to happen and realize that this is a process. So how are we going to control digital access? Attempts to bring them on board will be much easier when the parent-child relationship is best and influence is greatest. Now, how are you going to do that? Well, you can start with mealtime, family time, evenings, bedtime, are the most important times to keep free of digital activities. These times can create the space to provide the connection our children really need and to slow down the obsession. Now, I know many parents usually ask me when video games should be introduced to our children. Now, before I can tell you that, it's important that we need to know what lies beneath everything regarding the video games. Now, play is absolutely vital for our children's healthy development. Unfortunately, video games do not count in our brains as play. An activity is genuine play when it is not outcome-based. In genuine play, the fun is in the activity and not in the end result. As is parenting a lifelong activity with no end result. True play is for play's role, and it's not for winning or scoring. And video games take the place of the kind of play that should be happening in the child's life. The most important kind of play from a developmental perspective is what we call immersion play, when the child's true creative and curious self emerges. Video games should never be the main course. And if it is, your child is in trouble. There is a place for escaping from reality, but only if the escape prepares us to embrace reality upon our return. Imagining is all that the child needs to escape. We all know that. Unfortunately, nowadays, the commercial enterprises are doing that imagining for them. And children should be able to experience frustration and anger when they are trying to bend the reality towards their expectations. And once that futility has sunk in, escaping from reality from time to time can be great fun and quite harmless. While technology has extended our reach, it has disrupted our roots. To challenge a child already addicted by trying to control the behavior is not a good plan. There is really no way out but through, and we must confront the problem at the core. We are not able to nurture them unless they are feeding at our table. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more about that just now. So to conclude, I'm going to leave you with 8 steps to family digital wellness. And here I also want to mention again the website of Be in Touch. It's a wonderful website where you will find all the information, everything that you need to know about technology and devices for children. So first of all, be mindful of screen time. Create a family digital alliance. Model good digital habits. Install parental controls. Understand age restrictions. Change the device app and game settings. Know passwords and check devices. And join your kids' online world. We must give them a chance to mature so that they can become the masters of these new tools, not their slaves. And it is possible. We all know that. So the resources that I can recommend that you can really read, which is quite a nice book, it's from Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Mate, Hold On to Your Kids. And then I would also like to refer you to the website of beintouch.org.za, and then also to our website. Now, I previously said I'm going to talk about that whole thing of how are we going to create that relationship and that environment so that we can discuss the rules regarding devices and technology with our children. Now, the next step is to bring PET to your home. And those of you who don't know what PET stands for, it stands for Parent Effectiveness Training. Now, you can start with just getting yourself the textbook that you can buy on our online shop. That will give you a theoretical background and the foundation of the idea of what we are teaching parents and what it is all about. But to summarize it for you, you will learn communication skills so that you can re-establish the trust relationship with your children. And from there, it will be much easier to set some rules at home. Now, the options that we have available in our courses and our book clubs that we offer, I'm not going to elaborate on that tonight. All of you are going to receive a thank you email tomorrow, and then we will send this information to you as well. So this is the end of part 1. So from my side, I want to say thank you for attending, but I am going to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Elna Steenkamp. She's my partner in crime, and she's a clinical psychologist, and she knows a lot about health and wellness. Elna, you can take it from here. Thank you.
Heidi?
Yes.
Ek gaan net vinnig uitgaan en weer terugkom want ietsie is fout met my internet. Ek is nou by julle.
Okay, I'm going to stop our share, guys, and Elna will be back just now. So now we can see each other's faces while we're waiting for Elna to get back to us. Hi, everyone. While we're waiting for Elna, are there any questions? Anybody want to know something or ask something?
Hi, Heidi. I don't know whether you see me.
No, but I can hear you, Francois.
Yeah, because I'm not having a very good connection right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I just want to say thank you. Thank you for this presentation. And there is much food for thought.
Yeah.
And I think you have recorded this presentation. And if at all possible, if you can share this with the participants, it will be most helpful. And true it is that when we are having PET sessions, and one of the major problems that parents encounter right now is this question of digital time. How to, I think many parents complain about that, what to do because the kids are always on their screens. But unfortunately, too often parents just forget how long they do is spent on their phones. And teaching by example is something important, because very often we just reach home, we have some messages, some mails, we just want to reply immediately. We are as parents on our phones or on the screens, and then we just want to discipline our children regarding the digital time, and it is very difficult. So thank you for all this presentation and the real time. You have spoken a lot. There's really a lot of ideas that you have shared. And regarding attachment ID, I think that it is important for parents to realize that to develop the different type of attachment with our children is start very early. And because, are we going to be able to develop a secured attachment or an avoidance secured attachment, all these different attachment that Bowlby, I'm sure you have encountered what Bowlby described. So helping parents to be able to develop the type of attachment, I think that this will help when we are going to have activities with our children. And you have mentioned that anyway, the family time, the quality time that we are going to share. There is a lot of work, and I think it is very challenging for parents nowadays regarding the digital world in which we are living. So I just want to share that with you, and particularly to say thank you, Heidi, for giving us the opportunity to think about that. And I can see Marielle is attending, so that's very nice, because Marielle has a lot on her shoulders. I have left with a burden in Mauritius while I am in Madagascar, and looking forward to meet with her. And thank you, Marielle, for shouldering all the burden that I have left on your shoulders. Thank you.
Thank you, Francois. I really appreciate your feedback. But please don't leave as in yet. We still have part 2 of tonight's presentation. Maybe if you didn't understand, because me and Elna switch over to our mother tongue. But Elna, are you ready? Are you
Yes,
ready to go?
I am.
Thank you, Marielle. I really appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Heidi, for your information. It's always so great to hear your talk, and with such valuable information. We all know the saying that love makes the world go round. But actually, it is not love, it is the relationship. It is our relationship with one another that makes the world go round. And as parents and adults, we know that relating to one another, one-on-one, or couples, or families, or in the larger social groups, is the most complex thing human beings do. But we are literally wired to love and belong. And I want to explain to you and share with you a little bit how our brains work, and to show you how we are wired to belong and to love. Our earliest relationships actually built the brain structures we use for relating lifelong. And that means those first 10 years are the most important years in our children's lives for us to interact with them and to bond with them. And when those early experiences have been less than optimal, those unconscious patterns of attachment can continue to shape the perceptions and responses of the brain. The brain is a social organ. It develops and it changes in interactions with human brains. And this is also the good news. So if those first years were not ideal in terms of attachment, the human brain still has the innate capacity to grow new neurons lifelong. The brain also creates new synaptic connections between neurons lifelong. All of us can create new patterns of neural firing from new experiences. Human interaction stimulates the brain. The relationships stimulate the brain structures, activate, and to mature. And there's always the need to communicate on a non-verbal level or verbally with our fellow members of our clan or tribe. This communication will enable the brain to develop those amazing capacities of empathy, consciousness, planning, and language. So these abilities, they cannot get from a device. It needs to be human interaction. We are actually not the survival of the fittest. We are actually the survival of the nurtured. That's actually so good to know. We sometimes think our children need the latest and the most expensive devices. And we forget that nurturing plays the major role. Let's take a look at our brain and the structures in our brain. There are many neurotransmitters, and these are the neurotransmitters. They play an important role in, let me just go back. They play a very important role in the transmission of messages. The brain cells fire between 10 and 100 times a second, sending neurochemical transmitters across the synaptic cleft to be received by another neuron. And often because of overstimulation, trauma or malnutrition, or a feeling of not belonging to the system cannot do what is needed. For example, when our smaller kids watch animation movies before bedtime, it can overstimulate the brain, causing stress in their little bodies. The same with teenagers. All these gaming activities can really overstimulate the brain and the bodies. The process of neurotransmission is very important. The neurotransmitters are chemical messengers, and they carry messages between nerve cells, the neurons, and other cells in our body. They influence everything from involuntary movements to moods. And this is called the neurotransmission or synaptic transmission. Why is this important? Let me explain. Apart from teaching our children to make healthy food choices, to limit screen time, to choose the content of their screen time carefully, we also need to feed the brain on a micronutrient level. Unfortunately, the food nowadays do not give us what we need. So we need to supplement, especially for our brain functioning. A nutritional supplement like melatonin, for example, will provide the brain with all the essential fatty acids, the vitamins, and the minerals to provide support and overall mental wellness. The B vitamins are absolutely essential. Melatonin forms a neurotransmitter. Remember, we said how important is the neurotransmission in the brain. And melatonin helps with that whole process. It also keeps the myelin sheath healthy, and the myelin sheath has a protective role in the brain. Let's take a closer look at the ingredients we need to feed the brain. The oils, the essential fatty acids. Essential fatty acids mean that our bodies cannot produce it. We need to take it in. Salmon oil, evening primrose oil. MSM, that is also an ingredient that to help to reduce tiredness and fatigue and to promote overall mental wellness. It also combats allergies. And vitamin B, you can see all the B's. Functioning of the nervous system. B2, B6, B12, functioning of the nervous system. Reduce tiredness and fatigue. B3, again, reduce tiredness and fatigue and also psychological function. B5, mental performance. And also with the vitamin D, it helps the neurotransmitters. So if we as parents remember that we can also support and the brains, this gives us a tool to help them. But for our adults, we also need to look after our own brains, because when we as parents have enough energy and a well-fed brain, it's so much easier to be present for our children. Inner Guard will give you all the necessary vitamins and minerals to feed the brain. It also contains the nutrients to support the adrenal gland function and to help combat stress. Nowadays, especially during these COVID times, we find that every second person has burnout symptoms. And this is a good product to help the adrenal glands to produce adrenaline again. Ashwagandha also help to reduce stress and anxiety, and then Siberian ginseng help our body to adjust to stressful circumstances. Rhodiola rosea can help to decrease fatigue, increase alertness, and improve memory. Now that sounds like first prize for me, to have these ingredients to feed our brain. If we can give our children the right nutrition and create a healing environment through love and being present, the neural system becomes strong, able to handle stress and trauma. And a well-fed brain is more likely to lead to a good mood, good behavior, effective learning, and has the capability to form strong bonds. To summarize, what is the best way to compete with technology? Build a relationship, even when it's difficult or challenging. Especially with the teenagers, when they tell you they don't want you in their lives, or they don't want to hug or be with you, it actually means they really want it. So even if it's difficult, just be present, create an environment for them where they feel safe. And don't forget your example. I think Francois explained it so nicely. Often we forget and we quickly read a message during dinner time. Then we can't blame our children if they do the same. The time to build a relationship is now. And if you do that, the end result is really priceless. Thank you for listening, and keep well. And remember to love your children, to love each other.
Thank you, Elna. I really appreciate this very informational info. Is that the right way to say it? Before we're going to sign off, is there anybody who would like to ask a question? We still have time. If not, thank you for your time. We are going to send you a thank you email tomorrow, and then we will send you all this information. And yes, we did record tonight's presentation, so if any one of you would like the recording, we will send it to you.